Primetime top 10 matchup Saturday night. Miami goes into Death Valley to take on the number one ranked Clemson Tigers. I got Clemson Insider with me, Will Vandervort. Will, thank you so much for coming on today, man. I greatly appreciate the time you took out of your schedule to come on. So thank you so much, Will.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me, man. I always enjoy doing podcasts and things and, helping other people out that are, want to promote the game of college football or anything else. And, I appreciate you guys, wanting me to come on and talk about what I know, so it's good to be on, and, we'll have a little fun while we're doing it.
Definitely will. So I got to ask you, what are your first thoughts of Clemson so far? First 3 games into the season, they pretty much kind of handled every single game. It got a little chippy against UVA, but overall, I mean, they take care of business. It's Clemson football. So what are your overall thoughts, Will?
Yeah, I mean, business as usual so far. I think this is what we expected so far early in the season when the schedule was redone and they got here, everybody figured the first 3 games they should be able to win. Let people know. People look at the Virginia game and they're like, oh, what was the difference, than the year before and all that stuff. And to be honest with you, the difference was Virginia is a pretty darn good football team. And I think a lot of teams are going to find that out. And going into last week, I kept telling Clemson fans, hey, listen, this isn't going to be a 35, 40-point win. They're going to win the game, but they're going to be taken a little bit into the fourth quarter. They're going to have to make some plays because Virginia is just so well coached. Bronco Mendenhall is one of my favorite coaches when it comes to fundamentals and technique and how his team is always prepared. Even when those horrible teams he had, that 2-10 team he had his first year, if you go back and look at that team, how their effort was, how they were where they were supposed to be, they were coached well. You just knew when he started getting players in and started getting playmakers in, they were going to become a better football team. And I think you're seeing that this year. A lot of people, they lost Perkins last year. Everybody's like, well, Virginia's going to be awful. They returned 16 players from that team last year that went to the ACC championship game and played in the Orange Bowl. That's a veteran team. That's a big, gigantic, I'm talking enormous offensive line. The right tackle, 6'10", 350. 16. He made KJ Henry, who's 6'4", 250, look like he was me going up against KJ Henry. Okay, so I mean that's what KJ Henry looked going up against that guy. The other guy on the other side, left tackle, 6'7". How many people have 6'7", 6'8", and 6'10" offensive linemen?
Yeah,
not many. I mean, that's as big offensive line you're going to see anywhere in the country, an experienced offensive line. And so it wasn't too surprising that Clemson had a little trouble with him. But in the end, the athletes kind of took over, and Clemson does what Clemson does, and they win that game. Still, Virginia got a late touchdown to make it look closer than it was, but it was 41-17 with a minute 11 to go in the game. I mean, they had that game in hand. It wasn't like it was anything they were worried about. They never were out of control of the game. The game was theirs totally. So I think right now, the way Trevor Lawrence is playing, the way Amari Rodgers is playing, the way I think those young defensive linemen are better than they even thought they would be. I think Clemson's right on schedule where they want to be going into week 4 of a season.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think offensively, you guys are starting off where you picked off. I mean, Travis Etienne, debatably, is one of the best running backs in the history of the ACC in college football right now. I mean, he's a very good player. Amari Rodgers, I love him as a receiver, man. He is so physical. You have Frank Latson out in the boundary, local native from South-Dade Senior High School in Homestead, Florida, which is in Miami-Dade County. Hell of a player, and he's an underclassman as well. Trevor Lawrence as well, man. I mean, he's going to be a top 5 pick, maybe even go number 1 overall. How does this offense feel under Coach Tony Elliott? Because I know he wasn't the primary OC. He was splitting time with Jeff Scott. Then he went to University of South Florida. Is this the same offense you've seen from Clemson in the past, or there's a little bit of different wrinkles in it?
I think it's the same, but there's also a little difference too. I think you see a little bit more of Tony's touch on it. With the last 5 years, it was Jeff and Tony kind of collaborating together. Tony calling the plays, Jeff being the organizer that he is, kind of organizing the scripts and things of that nature, and they work good together. But I think what you're seeing with Tony is he's adding a little bit more of his flavor in. And to give you an idea that when you look at the game last week, Virginia, I thought, did a pretty good job basically stacking the box and shutting down Travis Etienne, if you will, and not allowing that Clemson running game to do what it wants to do. But Elliott stuck with it. He didn't give up on the run. He kept pounding the rock, kept giving the ball to Travis. And even though they weren't getting 6, 7, 8 yards like they have been in years past, no, they were getting 3 or 4, and it was allowing them to stay ahead of the chains and do what they want to. So he's a little more patient, I think. And I think that's showing a little bit more in this play calling scheme that we're seeing this year. There's a little more patience. And I think you're seeing that with Trevor Lawrence. That's paying off too, because Trevor seems very patient as he goes through his progressions. You can tell now he's a junior in college. He's just a little more refined. Worked on his footwork in the offseason as well.
Yeah.
Hand placement where he has the ball, holds the ball, is a lot better than it has been in recent years. So, when you look at, Trevor's progression with Tony's influence, I think you're seeing that patience kind of rubbing off on Trevor a little bit. And they're not going for the home run play every time. Right. They're taking what the defense gives them. So if it's the defense is sitting in a cover 2, they're going to go underneath, and they're going to go underneath with Travis. They're going to go to the tight ends. They're going to go with Amari maybe in some sort of cut routes or, around the middle of the field, or maybe some slants or post patterns. So that's kind of what they're doing when whatever look the defense gives them. Now, they've taken a couple shots downfield, but only when the defense has decided to bring everybody up and go straight up man with zero coverage. Then you're seeing them hit Latson and those guys over the top. So they feel like they have an answer for everything a defense does, and they're just going to take what that defense gives them. And the way Trevor Lawrence is executing that offense, it makes them hard to stop.
And that's why they're the number 1 team in the nation, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
Offensive line. You guys lost 4 starters on your offensive line unit. A lot of people say, it's rebuild and reload. In a sense, it's a new bunch. How do you overall kind of view your offensive line going into this game? Because Miami's defensive line, it's highly touted. They have very good defensive ends, defensive tackles that play well this season. This is probably going to be their best defensive line they faced so far in the season. I think that's fair. How do you view the offensive line so far going into 3 games and then going up against Miami?
Yeah, Miami's defensive front, we know they like to get a lot of penetration, and they like to disrupt things in the backfield, and that's their goal. And so I think when I look at this matchup, Clemson's got to do a better job of at the point of attack than they did at times against Virginia. But let's be fair here. Miami is not going to do the same thing schematically as Virginia did. Virginia came in and they really ran some exotic stuff that Clemson had not seen before. Now, Manny could come and do that. He could come and throw some every once in a while, but eventually he's going to go back to who he is. And who Manny is he likes to play with those. He knows he's got good guys up front, and he just likes to say, okay, you guys go get them and get after people. And so they'll eventually go back to who they are at some point in the game, no matter how they come out doing it. So I think from a matchup standpoint, Clemson's the offensive line's going to like it a little bit better playing against Miami, just because of the situation there. They're in a better, they're not having to worry about all these exotic things that Virginia was throwing at them in these different looks. And so that's going to help some. However, they still got to man up and block these guys, because as I said, if you look at the Louisville game, Miami was just a wreck, just plowing through people and just really kind of just dominating that line of scrimmage, especially in that first half where they just had Cunningham on his back. It seemed like every time he took a snap, and Louisville did adjust and made some plays in the second half. However, for Clemson, they can't get behind the chains. This whole offense is predicated staying ahead of the chains, setting up the play action. So they got to run the football. They're a power run offense. A lot of people look at them. They got Trevor Lawrence. They got these wide receivers and these tight ends. They're like, oh my gosh, they're the typical spread. They spread you out. They're finesse. No, Clemson is not a finesse football team. That offense is power football. They want to run the football with Travis Etienne. They want to establish the run, and then they set up the play action and they start throwing the football all over the place. If they can't run the ball, they can't set up that play action, and then Clemson's offense is limited. So, the offensive line, this is going to be a key matchup in this game. When I look at it, Clemson has to do a better job manning up hat to hat and really getting after that defensive line, because I think this is the area of this game that's going to tell. There's a lot of other matchups too, but this is the one I think is going to tell how this game is dictated as it moves on through the evening.
And, I've been breaking down a game with other contributors on my channel. And, when reviewing a lot of football games, people have stated, Trevor Lawrence does not perform well when he's pressured.
Mm-hmm. That's what they say?
That's what they say. That's what they say.
Yeah. They haven't watched a lot of games then. I mean, there's only one game that he struggled, and that was against LSU. And it wasn't because he was pressured from what LSU was doing. He was pressured from what Joe Burrow was doing. And that was the difference. He was trying to stay. He was still – people forget Trevor was a sophomore last year. He's still a young guy.
I know, right?
And he's got this guy, a fifth-year senior, 23 years old, Joe Burrow, basically seemed like he's been at LSU and Ohio State forever, if you will. This guy is a veteran guy, and he's out there making the plays that Joe made. And when you're a young quarterback especially, and you see that your defense for the first time all season is struggling to stop anybody.
Right.
Because remember, Clemson up to that point, Clemson had not really struggled. Even against Ohio State, after Ohio State went up on them, Clemson's defense kind of took over, and Ohio State didn't do much after that. Clemson outscored them 29-7 the rest of the game after Ohio State was up 16-0. So he's always had his defense there, had his back for the first 2 years. And that was the first game where the defense just didn't have it, and they were struggling, and they needed Trevor and that offense to step up and make plays. And I think he pressed a little in that game. But that's the only one, because if people don't think Trevor can handle pressure, they need to go back and watch the Alabama game in 2018 National Championship. Go back and watch the Notre Dame game in the college football playoff, the Ohio State game when his team's down 16-0. He's got to make something happen. That guy can handle pressure. It was just one instance where he struggled against LSU. Now, this is the first big test he'll have since that LSU game, but I don't think if Miami fans are banking on Trevor Lawrence struggling because of pressure, then they're barking up the wrong tree, because they don't want the ball game to be in Trevor Lawrence's hands. Trust me, the kid's going to be fine no matter what Miami does. Granted, you want to get pressure on the quarterback. You want to disrupt him. Just the great Tom Brady. We saw it last night. I mean, he's the GOAT, right? And we saw you put a little pressure in his face, they're going to struggle. Anybody's going to. That's the name of football. That's how you play defense. You disrupt the quarterback. You make him think. But that's not going to be anything Trevor's just feeling pressure. That'll be a credit to whatever Manny Diaz is dialing up and what those Miami defenders are doing. So I wouldn't count it as Trevor can't handle the pressure. That's baloney if somebody's saying that. They need to go watch the other 30 games that Trevor Lawrence has played as a starting quarterback.
Before I switch over to the defensive side of the football for Clemson, any matchups you're looking for offensively for Clemson against Miami's defense to look out for throughout the game?
Yeah, matchups. Clemson's offense against their defense. I would say the biggest matchup for Clemson to try to exploit is Miami's linebackers. I think up the middle, just like on the other side, if you flip it on the other side, it's the same weakness for Clemson. Up the middle of the field is the weakness on both of these defenses. And I think, that's where both these teams can exploit the other. And I think you're going to see Clemson try to do that a lot with Braden Galloway, the tight end, who's a very talented tight end. And if people haven't seen him play,
that's right.
They're going to see him tomorrow night. There's no doubt. So I say that's probably the matchup to watch when you see Clemson on that side of the ball. And then again, we mentioned it earlier, Clemson's offensive line against their defensive front. Clemson's got to show they could run the ball for 4 or 5 yards and stay ahead of the chains. They have to do that because they need to set up the long game, because I don't think Miami's going to come out there and, go straight up man with a safety high or anything like that. I think they're going to do like everybody else does. And they say, okay, Clemson, you got these young wide receivers, we're gonna sit there. We're gonna put 6 or 7 in the box. We're gonna stop the run, and we're gonna dare Trevor Lawrence and those wide receivers to beat us. That's what everybody else has done. I don't see any reason why Miami wouldn't, because when you've lost T. Higgins and you've lost Justin Ross, and you don't have those weapons on the outside, it allows defenses to do some different things from a coverage standpoint. And what you don't want to do is let Trevor Lawrence be able to beat you over the top deep. And and I don't think Miami, I think, will be perfectly content allowing Clemson to have to go earn it, as opposed to allowing Trevor and those wide receivers just to, go play pitch and catch out there. So it's going to be a lot of like shut the run down and then make those receivers have to make plays.
Absolutely.
Once they catch the ball. And so we'll see if that happens.
Something unique about this game, well, I don't know if you knew this, but Frank Latson and DJ Ivey, who's a cornerback at Miami, were both teammates at South Dade Senior High School. So they'll be going against each other Saturday.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's, they were teammates in high school, probably good friends, and now they're going up against each other in a top 10 matchup. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. And Frank, he's come out. Joseph Nagata, he's had a abdominal strain the first couple of weeks, and Dabo thought he was going to come out and he was going to be the player. Dabo actually said he was the player to watch, but he's been injured, and so Frank has stepped up and played that boundary position there, and the 9-man for Clemson, and has played it well. And is and you saw that he's had a couple big breakout games and is doing what he needs to do. So I really like what Clemson's wide receivers are getting better. They're young. You're starting to see emerge with a guy like Frank Latson. Amari Rogers is kind of that experienced veteran that you can play at all three positions. Cornell Powell the same way. And then they got these guys that are going to be the next wave of Clemson wide receivers that just keep coming through there. And so they're young though right now. You probably don't know their names, but trust me, in the next couple of years, you remember the names Joseph Ningata, Frank Latson, E.J. Williams.
Yep, 5-star.
You're going to hear a lot about those guys here in the next few years, but right now they're a bunch of babies, and I think Miami's going to try to make sure those babies make mistakes.
Will, this is probably one of the best matchups, offense to defensive coordinators. Rhett Lashley, Broyles Award finalist this past season, going up against the best defensive coordinator in the game, Brett Venables. What is your kind of outlook from an outside perspective of this Miami offense? De'Aaron King, they already have him in as a dark horse for the Heisman. It's so early. I mean, who the hell cares at this point? But I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, he's done a fairly good job so far. It's a completely different Miami offense that a lot of teams haven't seen in the ACC before. It's very up-tempo. Rhett Lashley ran a power spread at Auburn. He'll go air raid on you. What is your overall view of this Miami offense?
You remember he was at Auburn for 2013 to 16, I believe. And he did a pretty good job, I thought, for the most part. At the tail end of his tenure there at Auburn, kind of lost his horses, if you will. He didn't have that kind of quarterback that you need to run this kind of offense. He gets that with a Derek King. There's no doubt about that. King brings that level of explosiveness that the position needs in this offense, because what this offense is, man, it's a lot of window dressing. There's guys going in motion and doing this and that, and they're trying to get the defense to look over here, so it's hard for the defense to they got to stop. They got to stop and just pay attention. And what it does, you saw it against Louisville, you saw it against Florida State, where guys are running wide open because they get lost because they're not using their eyes properly, And so you got to be that's where this is going to be a good thing to see with Clemson, because this is a matchup because you got a young defensive line. You got some young players at Clemson that are very talented. You're talking about 5-star guys. Yeah, and they're going to be, so how disciplined are they going to be? How much have they studied? How much have they watched? Because they got to have eye discipline is going to be everything for Clemson in this game as far as trying to slow that offense down. I remember when he was at Auburn, the kind of different things he used, and Clemson came out with some weird, crazy formations to try to confuse the quarterbacks, and it worked. And they had a dynamic running game down there at Auburn, and Brent Venables held up to 87 yards rushing. Yep. And but the difference there was they didn't have the quarterback to really that Brent Venables was worried about him. And so this is different because they got the quarterback. And so now you just can't say, okay, we're going to shut down Harris in that running game, and we're not going to allow them to do anything from a run standpoint. They can't really do that. And I thought what Red has done with this offense is he's really masked the issues on the offensive line that you guys have had for the last several years. And he's really done a good job masking that and getting King out and rolling him out in space, keeping him away from that defensive lines. And that's what he's going to have to do in this game, because Clemson's got some talented, young, but talented defensive linemen. Miles Murphy, he's that guy's outstanding. And, he's going to be he's already where Cleveland Farrell was in 2016 as a redshirt sophomore. He's already there where Cleveland Farrell was then. So this guy's going to be really good. He's a playmaker on the defensive end side, and he's going to make some plays. You guys are going to know who he is by the end of this game. Trust me. But So what does Lashley do as far as making sure he's rolling King out, get him away from that pressure, allowing him to use his feet? I think they're going to do that. And then, schematically, Brent Venables, man, there's nobody who can. I'm going to tell you this honestly. They probably played Virginia, but knowing Brett, knowing the way he thinks, I wouldn't doubt during practice his players probably didn't know it, but he probably worked on a couple of Miami things without them knowing it. He just kind of probably sprinkled it in there. Just let me see if this works and how it works, because Virginia, actually, some of the things they do are very similar to Miami. And so I'm sure he sprinkled that in just to kind of see how it would work. I think you're going to see something very exotic that he does, because Brent will try things. Even with young players, he will try things to see how it works. And he's got a guy at middle linebacker and James Skowski, who's very smart. He understands the game. It's sort of like having Brent on the field, if you will. And, so they're going to try some things. And, don't be surprised if you see Clemson come out there with a 4-2, a 4-2-5 look, or a 3-2-6 look. Against LSU last year, they actually came out with 7 defensive backs, where they just had one linebacker on the field. So don't be surprised if you see those kind of looks, just to try to throw Derek King off a little bit and throw Lashley off a little bit out of their game, and make them have to call things or do things they don't really want to do. That's kind of what he likes to do with the safeties and linebackers. And so it's going to be a nice little chess match to watch those two go after it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm extremely excited. I mean, Gus Malzahn said, as of right now, Rhett Lashley is one of the best OCs in college football right now. I mean, he's done a very good job. What are your overall thoughts about Derek King so far as a quarterback? Because, he came from Houston, made some noise there, transferring to Miami. Would like to pick your brain and kind of get that outside perspective, how Derek King fares amongst the college football quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, I think he's definitely right up there, especially in the ACC with Trevor. He's a veteran guy, and I think that's something that he brings to the table as a fifth-year senior. He's been through the wars, if you will. He's been in some big games, so he knows how to play, maybe not to the magnitude of this stage that they're going to be on Saturday night, but he's played in some big games. And so that's comforting if you're Manny Diaz and you're Rhett Lashley, that these guys this quarterback can play on this stage and he can execute what you're doing and not be too big of a moment. I'm gonna tell you what also helps is the fact that there's not going to be 83,000 fans there. Yeah. That's a benefit to Miami in this kind of game, because Clemson fans they're as loud and as intimidating as any in the country, and not to have to worry about 83,000 people on top of you in that valley. And that's the reason why they call it Death Valley, because you're literally in a valley. And so not having that is going to be a big deal for them. It'll still be, you'll find out, it's a little bit louder than most people would think 19,000 would be, because the sound does go into a valley and it can get loud. But he's not going to have to worry about that. And that's going to be beneficial to him. And being the fact you take that experience, I mean, I like him, to be honest with you. I think he's a better passer than Lamar Jackson was at this point in his career. Yeah, I think he's a little more accurate. Lamar Jackson is not, when he was at Louisville, was not as accurate passer, and that's why Clemson could do some different things to slow him down, especially if you look at that 2017 game against Louisville, what Brent Venables did in that game to kind of make Lamar Jackson have to beat them with his arm, which they didn't feel like he could do. I don't think he's going to try that here, because I think King can beat him with his arm. He can make those throws. He is a little bit more accurate passer. And so that's, so I think, his athleticism, his ability to escape, I think Dabo said he averages 5 yards after contact. So once you get hit, he's going to still go forward. He's still going to keep working. He's like Dabo called it. He says he's like a running back playing quarterback in the sense of what he does after contact. And then he averages 15 yards per scramble. So, you kind of relate that to a Patrick Mahomes, if you will, in the NFL, where you get Patrick Mahomes outside the edge, he's going to run for 15 yards and going to kill you on 3rd and long. So how does that affect you on 3rd down situations? Clemson loves to play press man, but do they want to play press man and have him be able to run out of pressure and then run 15 yards up the field? Those are things Brent Venables got to think about, because he's a dynamic quarterback that can do a lot of different things, and he can throw the football well, especially on the run. You saw a couple of those plays against Florida State where, he's outside the pocket, he's on the run, and he made that long throw down the field when a guy's just tattooing him. When coaches see that kind of stuff going on and a guy making an accurate throw down the field like that, that's pretty impressive, and you take notice of that.
Man, I cannot wait for this matchup. I know the past two matchups, Miami versus Clemson, it's not even one-sided. It's just embarrassing. Clemson 158-0. Thank you for that, by the way. I mean, Al Golden was horrendous. ACC title game, it was 38-3. I mean, Clemson's literally outscored us like 100-3 the past two matchups. I cannot wait. College game day will be there. ABC primetime television. Will, the expectation that Miami fans are thinking in their head right now, it is going to pour. It is going to be a monsoon of rain. Is that what the expectation is in Clemson, South Carolina? Should I get a poncho? I'm not moving from my seat. I don't care if ESPN is calling me a dumbass. I am standing in the rain with everyone else.
Well, listen, when they had the torrential downpour in Notre Dame, where another tropical system came through and sat right on top of Clemson, the storm sat right on top of Clemson in that game. And there was 83,000 people there, and not a single person left their seats the entire game. So trust me, if it's a good game, you're not going to be the only one sitting there with your poncho on. Those 19,000 other Clemson fans that are allowing into the game are going to be there right beside you, and they're going to be sitting there through the whole thing too. But yeah, what we're hearing conflicting reports. I've seen 80% chance of rain, maybe an inch to half inch in this area. Then I've seen others where it says 100% chance of rain, 3 to 5 inches. Yeah. So I'm seeing conflicting reports. Well, I do know this: it's going to rain. It's going to rain a lot. So yeah, bring your poncho if you're coming to the game, and just be prepared. The good news is, guys, it's not supposed to be a thunderstorm, so we're not going to have any lightning delays or anything like that. It's just going to be a lot of heavy rain, and that's going to be a factor in this game too. Who plays the best? Both these teams have the capability of playing well in the middle of the field, and what I like to call mudders. A mutter kind of game, and this is what this is going to be. And so who has the best mutter? Is it Travis Etienne? Is it Harris? We don't know. Is it those tight ends on both sides? Because I think, like I said before, I think with Jordan and Mallory, they can exploit Clemson over the middle with their linebackers and safeties. I think Clemson can do the same to Miami with their tight ends. So we'll see. Because a team in a game like this, the team who wins the middle of the field battle is going to win this football game in that sense. Because what I think in a way, it'll allow Clemson's defense, I think, to focus more on Miami. Because Miami likes to do all those shifts and motions that we talked about. Well, when you have a downpour going, you're not going to do as much of that because you want to make sure guys get lined up and correctly, and nobody's slipping and falling and everything. So that may help Clemson's defense in that standpoint. Doesn't mean they're going to stop them. It just means it's going to be able to allow their young players to just be focused on playing football and not all the stuff Miami likes to do.
Well, Clemson, they've lost a lot of key players on the past season. Obviously, you went to the national title game. You're a powerhouse. People declare to the draft. That's the expectation. I know it's early in the season and this team fully hasn't gotten their identity, but, talent-wise, skill-wise, do you think this team, can compete for another national title? They have the guys for it, or is this, hey, like, I don't know if we can really win the national title this year or keep that number one rank throughout the season?
Oh, they feel like they can win the national title. Definitely. Yeah, this is a very confident team. They got the leadership in the right places. And that's why, when you look at the quarterback, who he is, when you look at the running back, Travis Etienne coming back, even that offensive line, the guys that are playing, a lot of those guys are first-year starters, but they've played so much the last couple of years that they're really not. You know what I'm saying? Because they would play 35 to 40 snaps a game the last 2 years because Clemson has won so many games by 30 points going away. Dabo has those guys in a lot. And also Dabo makes a point of it. He started this after the 2015 season when Clemson had some depth issues that year. And especially on the defensive side of the ball where like Ben Boulware played, him and Kendall Joseph, the linebackers, played like pretty much every snap of the entire season. And they were just so worn down by the time they got to the national championship game. Dabo and his coaches got together, and Dabo said in that meeting, hey, look, we don't ever want this to happen again. We cannot be in this situation where, we just don't, we wear down. We can't allow this to happen again. We need to start playing our younger players more. And so starting that year, and they'll do it again on Saturday, I guarantee it. They'll play like 58 guys by the end of the first quarter. That's how many players by the end of then they'll finish the game with over 70. Last 2 years, they've led the country in average number of players played, around 72, 74 range. And most of those guys play in the first half when the game still matters, when it's not just mop up time, if you will. And so when you look at that offensive line, they've benefited a lot from that, especially these guys that are first year starters this year, supposedly. And so that's been a benefit to them when you look at, okay, is this team ready? You know, they're young on the defensive side, but they have a senior middle linebacker, right? They have a senior safety who knows what he's doing. They got an all ACC caliber player on the defensive line with a couple seniors right there in the middle. So they're young compared to years past, but they have the right leadership in the right spots. Amari Rogers is the leader on that wide receiver core. Couldn't ask for a better guy to kind of be leading that group. You know, I mentioned Travis and Trevor, the offensive line, where you got a Matt Bockhorst, who is like the leader of all leaders on the team, you know, and I mentioned Skowski on the defensive side. So there's guys everywhere in positions that can lead, and that's why they feel like they can be a number one ranked team. They feel like they have the talent, and they feel like they have the leadership to make another run.
Will, last question before we wrap it up. What is your score prediction? Miami versus Clemson, top 10 matchup. David versus Goliath, whatever you guys want to call it, it's going down Saturday night in a monsoon or in a beautiful night. Someone will win tomorrow night. Who do you got?
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, it's to hear you say Miami's David versus Goliath, and growing up, you know, a college football fan, it was the other way around if Clemson were to play Miami. So it's still crazy to me hearing that because when I think of Miami, I still think of Michael Irvin and those guys and, you know, just winning all those championships that they won in the 80s and 90s. So, but as far as this game goes, when I look at it, you know, I think Miami is a much improved football team. I really do. I think they're the real deal. I do think, I won't say to use back yet because you got to show that consistently, not just one season, but I think they are playing better. I think they are playing as a unit, and I think Manny's got this program going in the right direction. I love his enthusiasm. I'm a defensive guy, so I love the fact that he thinks about defense and how important defense is. Because I think in college football that gets lost sometimes with some of these. Everybody wants to go spread and throw it and score 50 points. No, you still got to play good defense to win championships. And so it's good to see that, and I like that about them. And I think they're going to come in and they're going to give Clemson everything they can. And I think with their athletes, they're going to cause some troubles. I think this is going to be a 4-quarter game. I really do. But I think where the game turns is at the line of scrimmage. And I think Miami is where Clemson is from a defensive standpoint, but I don't think they are where Clemson is on the offensive line standpoint. And I think the offensive line will show up, and Clemson's defensive front will be able to get a little bit better, more penetration, I think, than Miami. In the end, I think they'll make a few more plays on defense than Miami's, and I think that's where they'll win the game. Just a little bit better right now on defense overall. And I said, you know, I said it's going to be a 14-point game. That's the spread. I can see it pretty much being right there. You know, maybe it's a touchdown game late in the game. Clemson gets a late score to win it. My prediction when I put on our website, the Clemson Insider, was 45-31.
45-31. Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, not many teams score 30-plus points against Brett Venables. I think it's only –
No, they don't.
Yeah.
That's a compliment when I got 31 points against Clemson's defense. It's not something they do. Even this young defense, they still don't like to give up that many points.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a very fair score prediction. I mean, Vegas doesn't lie. They're pretty accurate. You know, my thing with this game is a lot of question marks on Miami's side. This game is a program evaluation, how close, how far we are, you know, to being a top-tier Power 5 program, because obviously the last two matchups, it showed our huge flaws that we're not even close to Clemson's level or a college football playoff. So this is going to really be a true test for Miami. I'm curious how De'Ara King and this young offensive line performs. We were a very bad offensive line unit the past season. We're going to go up against a very talented defensive line front, probably the best we're going to see all year. How do they hold up? How does Clemson react to De'Ara King's run ability? You know, he's like you said earlier, he's a good running back. How effective will he be in this game? The Rhett Lashley up-tempo offense, how does the best defensive coordinator adjust to that? It's going to be a very unique offense. I'm sure he'll be prepared. How do our cornerbacks stack up against a fairly young and veteran Amari Rogers and the wide receiver core at Clemson? Frank Lathan, young player, like you mentioned, EJ Williams as well. How do our cornerbacks play? Our linebackers as well. They're not the fastest in the ACC, but I think they just get the job done. And there's been a lot of talk about Blake Baker and his defense. A lot of people think it's very suspect at times. I would agree. We show flashes of greatness, then we have a lot of flaws defensively. So there's a lot of question marks on Miami's end. I'm going to the game. So I'm just going to go with the momentum, the excitement. I got Miami winning by a field goal. We have a very good kicker. Our special teams is very good. I think it's going to be a game-winning field goal. If I'm wrong, Will, I'm wrong. I completely think a 14-point win against Clemson. I'm going to be in Death Valley, a monsoon or no monsoon at all. I'm going to be there in my poncho. I can't wait, man. I got Miami winning by 3. Will, thank you so much for coming on, man. You did a tremendous job. Best of luck tomorrow night, man. Are you going to be at the game?
Oh yeah, I'll be there covering it in the press box. So I'll be dry though. It's an open air press box, but it's covered, so it's good.
I'll wave at you. When
please do. I'm sure I'll see you. Where are you sitting at, by the way? Where are you sitting at?
It's upper deck TD. God, I have the tickets right. TDT, I want to say sideline.
So you're on the north side. TDT. Yeah. I know where you're at. Yeah, okay. I know where you're at. You actually probably could see me.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, if you look straight down to your, I think if you're sitting, let's see. Yeah, if it's going, it's going this way. So yeah, if you're sitting over here, what port are you coming out of? What portal?
That's a good question. I got StubHub. They have to send me the tickets. They haven't sent it right now. They're doing something weird about it.
What side of the hill are you on? Are you looking at the hill from your left side? Or are you looking at the hill from your right side?
The right side, I believe.
So you're over here looking. So you're looking towards the end zone, towards the east end zone, where they're coming down the hill. Okay. Yeah. So if you're over there, then you would look to your left about 45 degrees, and you'll see where the press box is. Okay. And I'm usually sitting right up front there. So
very cool, man. I'll keep my eye out for you, Will.
Yeah, man. Wave. I'll wave back.
Sounds good, man. Hey, thank you so much, Will. I appreciate your time.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me, buddy. It's been a blast. I always love talking football with people who know how to talk it too. So.
Hopefully we can talk again for the ACC title game, right?
That'll be fun, man. That'll be fun. Hey, let's do it. Let's do it.
Sounds like a plan, Will. Have a great day.
You too, bud.